Dear friends, uh, it's a matter of pleasure for me to introduce Dr. T.K. Das. He is head of the Department of Mathematics, Faculty of Science. Today he is going to deliver a talk about the approximation theorem. Uh, he is a very renowned mathematician in the state of Gujarat. He is leading the Department of Mathematics, Faculty of Science, the MSv University of Baroda, and I am sure that you will enjoy his talk. Myself, Dr. Hari Kataria, I am Associate Professor in the Department of Mathematics, Faculty of Science, the MS University of Baroda. Now, sir will talk to you.
Thank you, Hari, and it's a pleasure to be part of this program, and also a kind of a challenge that hopefully we can make this subject a little more interesting than what usually we do at the in the classrooms. Without taking much of your time, I just want to come to the topic. We are going to see some fundamental elementary results. First of all, we'll build up how the approximation theory really comes into picture in analysis. We'll start with some very elementary functions, and then we will try to go to the Weierstrass approximation theorem case. Okay, let us see a couple of slides first, and then we will see what are the things we can do. So let me go to the slides first. You can see that not all functions which are infinitely differentiable admit Taylor series expansion. You all must have studied Taylor series in your calculus courses. And moreover, even if a function has a Taylor series expansion,
You read there on.
expansion, then about some point the convergence of the series may be extremely slow for computation. Why I am talking of slow and fast, because these days is a computerization, so you can actually find out the speed, and you can actually do it graphically. But the challenge is that to approximate a continuous function by very simple kind of, most simple kind of functions, whatever is possible. So the best polynomial approximation was actually given by Weierstrass, and it uses a strong theory of uniform continuity. I'll come to that a little later. The most general form we can say that approximation is dedicated actually to the description of elements in a topological space. Maybe you can think of a metric space, and approximation in some sense tells you that how to characterize the limit points of a set. The first theorem came into existence by Karl Weierstrass, who proved in 1885 when he was 70 years old, right? The density of algebraic polynomials. Polynomials we all understand, linear polynomial, quadratic polynomial, and things like that. In the class of all the polynomials are differentiable, so you must be able to make out that all the polynomials are continuous functions, so they obviously are continuous real valued functions. So what Karl Weierstrass proved is that the algebraic polynomials, what we know, is a dense set. That means its closure is the collection of all continuous real valued functions on any closed and bounded unit interval, or any interval, in fact y unit, any interval you take in R. Here is the gentleman I am talking of, and signed by himself, Weierstrass himself. Okay, before I come to this, I like to motivate you to this result by taking up the simple cases. So what I'll do is I'll go to Blackboard and make some simple calculations for you so that you can understand things better. All of us know what are step functions. When you are very young, you first thing what child learns is to walk, and then he or she tries to go on the staircases. He will step 1, step 2, and so on. But then the moment child gets disbalanced, and he or she will fall down. So that balancing act, is a very natural phenomena of steps. So you can think that steps functions, but then he has to step up or step down continuously in order to maintain. Now I'll take up a simple example. I take some closed interval -2, 4. This is a closed and bounded interval. So on some pieces I can actually show you the graph. Actually I can indicate this graph also on my PC. I have this. So you can actually check it. So you can see this is, for example, you can see the typical example of a step function. So I have actually indicated the steps in that graph. You can see it is shown to you. So it is taking, for example, 0 value on this interval, then 1 at this interval. So 0, 1 are not very specific. You can take any kind of values, some specific values. So on some fixed intervals, it takes constant values. Now this is an example of a step function. Now the first thing what I am trying to show you is that if you take any, so this I will denote a closed and bounded interval, right? For example, this is a closed and bounded interval, and this epsilon is positive, any positive. Then what is that we will try to do is, we will try to find out, then there exists a step function, right, so which will depend on epsilon, such that whatever x you take in the closed interval, right, whatever x you take in the closed interval, then this distance will be less than epsilon. So this will happen for all x in I, right. So step function, obviously you saw that it is so simple in nature. Now this is a continuous function. Continuous functions, you can imagine anything. For example, these days you go to any medical doctor and you want to check your heartbeats or something, he'll give you a long strip and there will be some graph which is very complicated. But then that graph is a function, is representing a continuous function over a compact interval. So function could be very complicated, but what we are saying is this function can be approximated. It can be as close as you wish by approximated by a step function. Now this epsilon is given, so you can choose this constant as small as you please. Now I will quickly indicate you the proof of this. The proof is not very difficult. What we can do here, I am trying to indicate a proof here because mathematics has to be done, so you must see how to achieve this kind of a system. So I will indicate you the proof. Now what I am going to assume here is that most of you are finally a graduate student, so you know continuous functions on I. So what is my I? Yes, my I is a closed and bounded interval. Continuous functions on this. So okay, I can say real valued continuous functions on I are uniformly continuous. Right? What is uniformly continuous? Okay. So what is uniformly continuous? That is, let me write, for any epsilon greater than 0, you can always find a constant delta, which of course will depend on epsilon. So I am putting epsilon here, right? I am putting an epsilon greater than 0. For any epsilon greater than 0, there exists delta greater than 0, such that what happens? Whenever we choose 2 points in I whose distance is less than delta, such that whenever x, y are 2 points in I such that their distance is less than delta, right, then their respective images will have distance less than epsilon. That means the choice of delta is independent of the choice of points you make from the closed interval I. This is very significant. That is why the word uniform. This delta remains uniform for any 2 points. This you must have studied in some of your courses. So we will use this fact. So I'm going to use this here. I am given a continuous function. From this I know that this continuous function is what? It's a uniformly continuous function. So for that particular choice of an epsilon, I'll find a delta so that this happens. We can do this. So I'm choosing delta. Choose delta greater than 0 as described, right? As described. Where it is described? As described here. So let me put it asterisk, as described in this discussion. So let us choose this delta. Let us make a choice of this delta. Then what do we do? The interval, this I is a finite interval. Suppose this I is, say, let me make best use of the space available here. Say this is your I, say. This is A, this is B, this is closed and bounded. So this length is finite. So that means B minus A is finite. Now if B minus A is finite, then what I can do? Let me erase this, okay. My B minus A is finite and it is positive. Because it is positive, so you know, if you have any positive number, in this case B minus A, then what you can look at this sequence. This is a sequence. N is 1, N is 2, N is 3, so this is a sequence. So if you look at this sequence, B minus A by N, then we know that this will go to 0 as N goes to infinity, right? This will definitely go to 0 as N goes to infinity. So what, because this reaches 0, so there will be a stage, means there will be a large natural number N. So I can say this implies, what implies? This fact implies there exists M such that what happens? B minus A upon M, if you divide this quantity by M, then this quantity would remain less than delta. So delta is some quantity which is positive, so it will be a very small quantity, right? So what we are saying is, because this goes to 0, I can always find this M, right? This is possible. Now, so this particular number, let us call this by H. Let us denote this by H. I will erase this because the short of the space, I'll have to erase certain things, I'll have to keep certain things intact. So I am sure that you have now noted down or you have remembered what is a uniform continuity. So I'm going to erase it for you. This asterisk we are already used, so please remember this. So now this constant B minus A divided by M, I'm calling it H. This is my H. Now what do I do? What do we do with this H? With this H, we will make a partition of this interval. How do I make the partition of this interval? So I have A, then I'll say that this is my A plus H. Then the next one I'll take A plus 2H and so on, right? This will be what? So at what stage I'm going to get to this? So my H is this quantity, so you can say that A plus M times H. If you look at this, what happens to this? This is elementary. This is A plus M times B minus A M. What do you get out of it? What is this? So this is simply B. So what will be the end point here? The just previous to this place? Yes, this will be A plus M minus 1 times H. And what is this B? You can check here. This is I have written. This is A plus MH. Right? So we have subdivided these intervals. This particular interval into how many intervals? M intervals, right? By choosing particular choice of this. So I have these intervals. So I can now say this is typical interval is A plus H. Sorry, I'll make it because I want them to be disjoint. So I'll keep it open. Then next I'll take A plus H, A plus 2H and so on. The last one will be, yes, A plus M minus 1H and B. Huh? Yeah. So this is right. We'll close this here. So these are disjoint intervals, sub-intervals whose union is going to be I. And what is the beautiful thing which is happening here? The uniform continuity tells you that whenever you choose 2 points here or 2 points here or 2 points here or 2 points on this sub-interval, the respective images of f will be always less than epsilon. That is because of the uniform continuity. This is what we have achieved till now, right? So now what we do is we go to the next one. I'll show the next graph. You look at this. Now you can see that the middle graph, middle curve is, we are assuming y is equal to fx, for example. The top one is fx plus epsilon and the bottom one is fx minus epsilon. So this is a kind of a tunnel. What you are seeing here, this is a kind of a tunnel. And you can see that these are the subintervals a plus h and so on and so forth, a plus ms, that is b. And on these subintervals I am defining step functions. So I am defining a function, step function on this whole interval. So on this particular interval, our step function is defined to be this a plus h, then in the next one a plus 2h and so on and so forth. So this is how I am going to define the step function. So what is s epsilon in this case? S epsilon of x. This will be what? This will be, yes, f of a plus kh, right?